Hey, I'm Abby, and welcome to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today, I've got 5 common interview questions that you should prepare for your next interview, and a couple of tips on how you can prepare for each of those questions. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice and interview tips delivered directly to you every Sunday. If you're looking for a career coach and you're interested in working together, please go ahead and contact me directly. You've got my contact information in the description below. You can either send me an email, reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you're ready to hear those 5 interview questions and tips on how you can prepare for them. All right, so most interviews start off with a question very similar to the one that I'm about to share with you. And that's, tell me about yourself. If you haven't already, I have a full video on how to answer this question, so go ahead and check it out next. But this question is essentially an elevator pitch. So about 1 to 2 minutes long, with that sweet spot being about 90 seconds long. And you want to be careful with this one because it can be tricky to answer. It's assumed that the people in the room, whether that's physically in the room or virtually in the room, have already reviewed your application materials, which includes your resume. So there's no need to verbally review your resume. You also don't want to go into personal details, like where you were born and what you named your cat. You want to keep it professional and individualized based off of the job. I like structuring my answers to this question around 3 parts: present, past, and future. What are you doing now? What did you do to get here? And where do you see yourself going? You also can take this opportunity to tell your story. Focus on the why that put you here in this interview. Maybe describe that meaningful moment of clarity that made you decide that this was the career path or a job that you were interested in pursuing. You can also throw in a small humble brag where you talk about your golden skill, the one thing that you are exceptional at that you bring to the table for this job. You may also want to include your goal and how that relates to the mission, vision, or values of the organization. So there are a lot of different moving pieces that you can include in this. So I highly recommend writing your answer to this question out as a script and practicing it and rehearsing it until it feels comfortable and conversational. So tell me about yourself is one of the most common openers to any interview, whether it's a virtual interview, a phone interview, or an in-person interview. Another common question that is asked during the interview process is a question related to your strengths and or your weaknesses. I recommend preparing 3 of each, so 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses, just in case. You may be asked for both strengths and weaknesses, or you may be asked just for strengths or just for weaknesses. And likely, you will not be asked for more than 3. They might ask for your top 1 to 3. When it comes to your strengths, use the job description as your guide. This gives you all of the information that the hiring manager or recruiter is looking for in a candidate. Focus on specific qualities that qualify you for the job. You also don't want to be vague. Give context. Why is this a strength? How is it a strength? Do you have an example of how you've used this strength in the past? But remember, you don't want to come off as too confident or arrogant. This is more of a humble brag so that you can really give off the impression that you're confident, but not overconfident and have too big of an ego. When it comes to your weaknesses, this can be even harder to cover. I have actually got a full video specifically on how to dive into the question about your weaknesses. So go ahead and add that to your list to watch if you haven't already. There are a couple of questions that you probably don't want to use because they've been overused, the interviewers have heard them before, or they might indicate an underlying behavioral issue that you don't want to emphasize and bring to the table. So for example, you probably don't want to use that I'm a perfectionist. The chances of the interviewers having heard this before is pretty high. You also probably don't want to say that one of your weaknesses is that you take work home with you. This shows that you're actually pretty bad at time management, and time management is usually a desired skill for most positions. You probably don't want to say that you're a workaholic, because that's an easy way to dodge this question. And if you say that you're a people pleaser, that's just telling them that you are a yes person, and it's not much of a weakness to make them feel like you're being vulnerable. So you want to pick some weaknesses, 3, remember that you're going to prepare, that show your vulnerability, but also are things that you're working to improve. So emphasize something that isn't major. Not a major character flaw. It's not going to hold you back in being successful in this position. Show that you're willing to admit that you have room for growth and improvement, and pick a weakness that you've been working to improve. And then talk about how you've been working to improve that. Acknowledge how it's been a challenge in the past. Describe the steps that you've taken to improve that weakness or mitigate that weakness. Share how you're making progress, and maybe even emphasize how you've been recognized for making that progress. You may also want to consider the job. What flaws may actually be an asset for this job? So for example, if you're going into a leadership or management position, maybe you have empathy and compassion and your emotions can sometimes influence the way you lead. Well, if that's the case, describe how you've been maybe more intentional about your emotional intelligence and being proactive versus reactive. So what sorts of, quote, weaknesses or flaws could actually be considered as an asset in the job? And again, if you haven't already, please check out that video on weaknesses that I have. It will give you several good examples on ways that you can answer this question and how to prepare for this question. The third type of question that you will likely be asked during the interview process is a behavior-based question focused on how you handle conflict in the workplace. Now, this could be conflict with a customer, this could be conflict with a colleague or coworker, and this could be conflict with your supervisor or manager. It is critical that you take this opportunity to demonstrate your emotional intelligence. This is demonstrating your capacity for empathy and compassion. It also shows that you have the ability to deal with various personality types. When answering this question, it's easy to get into the trap of speaking negatively about other people, whether it's a toxic coworker or a bad boss. Don't fall into that trap. Don't focus on other people. Focus on the situation and the context. Describe the actual conflict. Again, don't make a point about others. Focus on what you did to recognize and resolve the conflict. Ways to start describing this is to use I statements and not talk about the other people. It's really focusing on you and how you handled the situation. Show that you were able to lead with openness, compassion, and empathy. Try to avoid using the word but and instead replace it with the word and. The word but indicates that everything that you just said before the word but is no longer valid. So try not to use the word but. Try to use the word and. And finally, when thinking about how you're going to be answering this question, really focus on the results. Emphasize the mission or the goals of the organization or your team or your project and how you were able to recognize those goals and the conflict that was preventing you from accomplishing or meeting those goals and what you did to solve it. The fourth type of question that you will likely hear in any interview is a question that asks you why you believe you are a good fit for the position. So first and foremost, you actually have to believe that you're a good fit for the position. If you don't believe that you're a good fit for the position, the interviewers or the recruiter or whoever's on the interview panel will be able to tell. Make sure you review the job posting. Once you've reviewed the job posting, then you'll be able to fill in some gaps that the interviewers wouldn't have known after reviewing your application or materials like your resume or cover letter. So you can give them a short 30-second story, and you can start off by saying, here's what you won't find on my resume. And you can describe some soft skills or life skills that you bring to the table that you didn't include on your resume, cover letter, or application materials that make you an incredible fit for the position. This might be that you are a superstar at customer service, and give a short story as to why. It might be that you excel at certain data analytics or data analysis. So do your homework on the organization, the department, the team, and the job so that you can provide a unique and impressive story that will help answer why you are a great fit for this position. Tie your skills and your experience to the role that you're interviewing for, and learn as much as you can about the position, the organization, and the team beforehand as possible. So this might be finding an insider in the organization or on the team who can give you some unique information or perspective that you may not get otherwise. You could do this through networking on LinkedIn. Maybe you personally know someone who works in the organization or on the team, and you can get insider information from them. But do your research and figure out exactly what it is that you bring to the table and how you can spin it in a unique perspective to show that you are the best fit for the position. Ultimately, you want to use your answer to this question to show that you're going to be a good fit both with the technical skills as well as a cultural fit for the company and the role that you want to fill. Finally, the fifth type of question that you will always be asked in an interview is if you have any questions for the interviewers. And the answer is simple. Yes. Yes, you have questions for the interviewers. Be prepared with just a few of your own questions and make sure that these are questions that you couldn't find the answer through a simple Google search. I have a whole video specifically on this topic, and it's about the 3 types of questions that you should ask after every job interview. You need to ask a question on culture. So this is asking the interviewers what they like most about their job, why they like working for the organization or the department, or, what's one thing that is going to challenge the organization or the department in the next 6 months. So it's something that's a cultural question. I like asking this question directly to someone or to the interview panel as a whole so that they can get talking. It's been shown that interviewers who do more talking actually feel better after an interview than interviewers who do less talking. Because when we talk about ourselves, we tend to feel good and important. So if you can get the interviewers talking, that's going to be to your benefit. The second type of question you want to ask at the end of your interview is a role-specific question. So if this hasn't already been answered throughout the interview, ask them what their expectations are for you in the first 30, 60, and 90 days in the position. Maybe what is the biggest challenge that this position will face in the first 6 months? So ask a role-specific question so that you can maybe get some clarity on what to expect when you start in this position. And then the third and scariest question to ask at the end of an interview is a hesitation question. Is there anything about you as a candidate that the interviewers are hesitant about? Is there experience that you're lacking? Education that you're lacking? Are they worried about something that you put on your resume or your application? So you can ask them, now that we've had some time to talk, is there anything about me as a candidate for this position that you're hesitant about? I've got a couple of other suggestions on how you can ask these questions in my video about the 3 types of questions that you should ask at the end of every interview. So if you haven't already, just go ahead and save that to watch next. And that wraps it up for us. Those are the 5 different types of questions that you should be prepared for during an interview. Tell me about yourself, a question about strengths and or weaknesses, a behavioral-based question on how you handle conflict in the workplace, a question about why you think you're a good fit for the organization or the position, and finally, if you have any questions for the interviewers after the interview. So if you found this valuable, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to work together one-on-one so that you can receive individualized coaching around your interview skills, your interview prep, we can do mock interviews, or just general career coaching because you're not quite sure where you want to go or what you want to do, you can contact me via email, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and those are all linked in the description below. We'll have a free 15-minute phone consultation to decide if we would be a good fit for each other, and then from there we can go ahead and start to establish that coaching relationship. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.